God? Am I doing this to please me? Am I doing this to bring glory to the kingdom, or am I doing this to bring glory to myself? Am I doing something that's going to actually, when it's over, people are going to look at it and say, you know, God did that. That's awesome. Now, number two, not only your motive, but your mission. What are you doing? Why am I doing it? What am I doing? You know, when I got to Pit Detention Thursday night, I went ahead and don't normally do this, but I went ahead and told Sister Boone, I said, look, I'm going to be librarian tonight. They have a librarian, but they only goes once a month. And when we go back there in the F block and D block, they don't seem to get much. So, and every time they check them, they take all their stuff away. So I went in there, and I just loaded up a cart full of books, novels, and a whole bunch of stuff, Christian novels, and found some thriller novels and all kinds of Christian material. And I would go inside the D block, and the first thing I would holler out is, Book of the Month Club! Those guys would run to the door. So I'd holler, Bookmobile! And they'd run. I got a chance to, ministry was awesome. I didn't realize how much ministry was going to happen on Thursday night, just passing out those books. My motive? Number one was not to bring glory to David. What kind of glory can I get out of bringing books to those guys? I know being shut up 23 hours a day in an 8x8 room can get rough. Especially if there's two of you in there. Can you imagine an 8x8 room with two guys? 23 hours a day. And I can promise you, don't smell good in there. Mission? What? Get some stuff in their hands. So I felt like I could get some stuff in their hands, they would be less apt to be arguing and carrying on. Next thing, movement. When am I going to do it? Well, I did it Thursday night. I thought about it, I prayed about it. I sent Sister Boone, here's what she said. Well, the guy's already gone, but he went to A and B block. So the guy's already gone, but if you'd like to, I'm not sure what that meant, so I just wrote back. Amen, sister. Thank you. So now what? Why am I doing it? What am I doing it? And when am I going to do it? That's a powerful God. That's something good. I'm almost through. Finally, know that your goals have consequences. And every consequence, listen, every one of your actions has a consequence. Every one of my actions has a consequence. And every one of our actions, not only have a consequence, there is a touch of eternity in every consequence. Wow. Every consequence, there's a touch. I remember one day, I think I might have told you all this. I know I've told some of you this. I was at the NewYears walk, and I was one of the spiritual directors. And somebody sent me a letter. And let me just preface this. 3 years before, on a Sunday morning, I went in to preach, sort of like this. And when I went in to preach during praise and worship, the Lord said, that's not the sermon today. And I said, well, Lord, I've already prepared this sermon today. He said, do it next week. Something different today. I said, Lord, I don't know what to do. He said, John 14. I said, okay, what do I do with John 14? And so I wrote down a few words, let not your heart be troubled, neither be afraid, you believe in God, believe also in me. And I said, okay, Lord, now what? He says, roll with it. I said, okay. So I got up and I rolled with it for about 30 minutes. When I got through, I felt so bad because I felt like I was stumbling over myself and beating up and going back and forth. And when I left that day, I really left defeated. I said, I really hear you, God. Was that really you? Oh, was that really you? And that, honestly, whenever I think about that, I would say, was that really you, God? Was that you talking? Because there's sometimes it wasn't God talking. I know that. I learned that later. But this time, 3 years later, I'm at a mess, and I get a letter And it was from the guy that was sitting in that congregation that day. And he said, Brother David, I just want to tell you that I love you. And going on all the letter, but he said, I want you to know about something. He said, do you remember about 3 years ago, you stood up and started preaching on John 14 and said God had just changed your mind? I said, yes. He said, oh yeah, I said yes when I saw it. You remember preaching John 14? And he said, that day, my wife and I were fighting because she said she was going to leave me. And he said, my world was shattered. And he said, we came in. And when we sat down, he said, you stand up and say, God just changed this message. And he said, I was sitting down as you said, God changed the message. And he said, you turn to John 14:1. And he said, you know what? He said, God gave me something that day that got me through the next year. Something I can hold on to. And I want to thank you for being obedient. Wow. You say, again, eternal consequences. Negative and positive. They can have eternal consequences. See, Jesus, he determined to go to Jerusalem to die. Think about those positive consequences. Paul sought to give it all he had until he obtained the resurrection from the dead. Can you see what kind of consequence? We're here today because of those two guys. We need to be like this. Set our face toward heaven and determine to please God. And what better goals could ever be set? God, am I pleasing to you? When I go to work tomorrow, show me what to say and who to say it to. Just say nothing else. Let me be an example. Help me to be an example. When I work with my kids, at least let me be an example before them. You say, God is watching. I got something here for you. If I can get two ushers here. You need two. Y'all looking good. Pass these out. Give everybody one. If we run out, this is a limited supply. If we run out, we got a copy machine, we'll make a second limited supply. A lot of times when you go to church, the preacher will tell you what you need to do something, then you walk out and go, well, I wish they'd told me a little bit better how to do it. So here you go. I want you to put this up on your refrigerator. I want you to think about it. I want you to look. Remember, resolutions are goals. Goals are opportunity. Remember that. There we go. Before I do something, and I do this stuff all the time with people in counseling, and I do it all the time with myself. But I'm trying to figure out something to do and how to do it. So watch this. Next time you're trying to make a decision, I put a lot of lines in there, but you can just keep that paper and keep that as your reference and just write them down on a piece of paper somewhere. Here it is. My goals. What is it that I'm trying to do? What is it that really is striking me hard to do right now? What is it? There you go. Then ask yourself these 4 questions. I didn't put a question mark on one of them, so you're going to have to add a question mark. But here it goes. After you trying to figure out what to do for God, here it is. Number 1, am I actually being directed by God? It's my God goals. God goals in 4 questions. Am I actually, here's the goal, am I actually being directed by God? If you can check it, that's good. Next, ask yourself, is it in line with His Word? If my goal is to go to one of my brothers and pop him in the back of the head as hard as I can with a baseball bat, You think God will tell me to do that? And does it line up with the Word? No. Some of these guys that shot up abortion clinics, if they'd used this piece of paper, they would have been a whole lot better off because God didn't direct them to go shoot that clinic up. So, number one, here's my goal. Here's what I feel like God's telling me. Number one, is it directed by God? Here's how you test if it's directed by God. Number two, is it in line with His Word? Number three, does it require His help? When God's got you doing something, it's going to require His help. Because He's not going to ask you to do something, put something out there that you can just do on your own. Because if you're doing your own, then you're on your own. There's some people at Fountain. They come in and some of them will do some wild mess. Because I told them, you know, be free, think, be thinkers. And when you're figuring out problems in our engineering environment, go ahead, you're engineers, think about it, it's fine. But here's what I would always tell them. Tell me what you're doing. Always. And they go, but you told us to be free thinkers. I said, yes, I want you to be a free thinker. But if you don't tell me what you're doing, they're coming to me to ask, why are you doing that? And I can't back you up, and I can't protect you, and I can't let you be a free thinker if you don't tell me what you're doing. So tell me what you're doing. Matter of fact, bounce it off me. I can be the first one to tell you, I don't think that'd be a good idea, let's don't do it. Or I can be the one to say, you go for it. That way, when the COO or Reggie or somebody comes by and goes, do you know what they're doing? I can go, yep. Been there, seen it, know it, everything's cool. They go, okay. But I always hated when they said, do you know what they're doing? I'm going, please don't tell me. My goal, is it directed by God? Is it in line with His Word? Does it require His help? And number three, does it give glory to God? When it's all over with, there's somebody going to go, wow, God's awesome. If you take that, and if you even think about your goals, your resolutions that you made 6 months ago, and put them in there, you may find out that some of your resolutions aren't so good anyway, just throw them away. If you do this, I honestly believe you've searched God through prayer. Is it directed by God? I've searched God through prayer. I've searched God through His Word. Is in line with His Word. Requires God's help. I need His Spirit to help me. And at the end there's a testimony. So watch that. All that's covered, it's all covered. All of God's stuff. I've prayed. I've sought His Word. I've sought His Spirit to help me. And for God to open the doors and close doors. And now the testimony is God is going to get glory. If you do this, wow. Can you imagine what's coming your way? Next time, if God so directs, that we have this, something like this, reset, you can say, you know what? I feel pretty good. I don't have a whole lot. I got to reset. I used to hate it in school when the teacher would say, did you do your homework? If you did do your homework last night, raise your hand. Did you even carry your book home? Raise your hand. I'm looking at one right now that had the same problem. He looks like me. He had the lightest knapsack anybody I knew had cookies in it and stuff. Didn't have books. And even in Bible college, we had these real thick books that we paid a lot of money for. And our professor would say, read that book, but I'm not even going to teach from it. I'm going to teach from something else. So you take my notes and read that thick book, along with doing my notes and doing the stuff I tell you to do. And then say, part of this course is you've got to say you've read at least 90% of the book. And I'll always say, do you want the truth or do you want me to speak evangelistic? And I would say, no, I didn't read the book. Or yeah, I read a few pages. But if we're not going to be studying it, why do I even have to read it? It doesn't make sense. You realize we're pastors. You realize we got stuff going on. I'm also a baseball coach, football coach, basketball coach. I'm a daddy. I'm a husband. And I'm doing all this other work you're putting on top of me. And I got to read this book that's boring, and it's so boring you don't even teach out of it. And then he would go, okay, you get a C for that. And I said, what's that C for? Average? He says, no, clown. I pray, and I hope, I'm closing. Everybody stand up. DC, y'all come play something. I hope that this message today brought some insight into finding direction from God. It brought some insight into getting back in the game if you find yourself getting out of the game. Maybe next week we'll talk about prayer.